Welcome to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs, a webinar series that packs a ton of important agency information on one topic from one expert into a 25-minute brief. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Thanks for tuning in. This is Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. I'm your host, Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the agency of their dreams. Today, I get to talk with Ilia Markov, who leads the marketing team at the popular time tracking app Toggl. If you run an agency, there's a good chance you've heard of Toggl. Thank you for joining me all the way from, I think you said Bulgaria, right?
Yeah. Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be with you. Yes, dialing in from Bulgaria.
Awesome. Very cool. I've had folks from the UK, and I think you might be the first, the first from, definitely the first guest from Bulgaria. So I'm excited about that. But I guess it's safe to say this podcast episode is not sponsored by Toggl, but this is a great topic that we're going to dig into. Although we can talk about sponsorship, you and I later. That's fine. But we're talking about data and reporting and time tracking. And this is something that you're, of all things, passionate about. So kind of give us your story with Toggl and what you guys are all about and why you're running the marketing team there.
So yeah, I'm super excited to talk about data and time tracking. Like I definitely drink the Kool-Aid, but even I don't wake up in the morning thinking anyone gets excited about checking in and tracking some time. However, because we talk to many agencies, and I'm sure it's a very similar experience to yours. What we see consistently is those agencies that do very well, growing like a very manageable workload, escaping the feast or famine cycle, are those who actually take some time to think about how they run the agency and not just client work. Yes, client work is always first and the most important thing, but also spending some time to figure out your operations, your processes, your process documents. Again, not the most exciting topic in the world, but something that really allows you to kind of improve how the business is run. And this is where this whole idea of having data, collecting data, generating it, contextualizing it with additional information, and then using that to analyze and kind of get the insight that allows you to then improve your operations is what allows these agencies I mentioned to be better businesses that are more fun to run or to work for. So that's kind of my story. Toggl is not sure which kind of number in the SaaS industry. I've worked for a number of different SaaS companies, but I also have back in the day experience from agencies, working for a content agency, even running my own content marketing agency. And I remember what that lifestyle is like, whether you're a team member or a manager or someone who's running the agency, the stress, the challenges. And this is something that makes me super excited to kind of check in every morning, work with the Toggl team, and help agencies of any size, from the smallest to some quite big ones, do the same thing. Improve their businesses, run a more stable, happier teams, and so on.
So I think it's interesting that you've got an agency background and you bring that perspective as well as a SaaS background to the marketing side of a tool like this. When you were on the agency side, was your team tracking time? Were you using a tool like Toggl for reporting and budget tracking and things like that?
Yes, I've actually used quite a few different tools, including Toggl, before I even joined the team. Actually, very early in my career, I've also worked for a competitor of Toggl, so I'm quite familiar with the time tracking market. the interesting thing about Toggl, and something that makes my life as a marketing leader a lot easier, is that Toggl has a very strong opinion on something that divides the industry quite a bit, to be honest, and that's the idea of monitoring your employees, of surveillance. And Toggl has a very strong opinion against that, and it's very easy as a marketing leader to, whether I'm talking to you or another podcast or someone from the media reaching out to ask if we empower if we enable this somehow, to just say no, like Toggl is not a good fit. And we even get cases where like a potential customer comes in and they ask about specific features like that, and we actually send them in the way of our competitors, because Toggl is not a good fit if you want to monitor your employees. It's not going to do the job. It like you wouldn't be happy with it, and we're very happy to kind of say no to people who are interested in that.
So that's like a feature that some of the tools have, where even if I'm not actively clicking, I spent 3 hours doing research on this branding, there's something in the background that's monitoring what I'm doing and what apps I'm using. And you guys are against that, but there are tools that are, that's a feature of theirs that people want.
There tools, there's like a whole spectrum of creepy, where on the lowest side you have like tracking mouse movements and keystrokes on the keyboard. Really easy to get around. You go on your favorite e-commerce store and you just look for something like I think they have like a special name, but essentially you can plug something in the USB port and it acts like a mouse which is moving all the time. So it's very easy to get around these kind of like mouse movements tracking if you want to.
Yep.
And then, like I mentioned, the spectrum of creepy, it goes all the way to, I know some tools go as far as using the webcam to take pictures of whether the person is actually sitting in front of their screen and like doing something or not, which is just crazy in my mind, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we're like completely against that. It's, if you want to cheat with Toggl, it's actually really easy. We give full ownership to users, so they can do whatever they want with the data. They can input data, even like time tracking data manually. And it's very, as a manager, it would be very hard to understand, like to realize this was added manually versus through automated time tracking. So if you try to build and enforce a culture of compliance along those lines, as I said, Toggl is not a good tool for that. And we actually have a practical reason to do that, because we believe this method of running an agency or a team just doesn't work. Because we see that after a while, you need to hire one person to oversee each person that you have on the team. And that's obviously not sustainable and not possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I grew up having internships where we tracked time on paper, and then we handed in our timesheets at the end of the week, and then the office manager tallied it all up and ran it against project reports and things like that. And I don't remember the first digital tool we used, but it was probably something built in FileMaker or something very custom to the agency. It was not a SaaS tool, because SaaS wasn't really a thing at the time. But I think it's got to be a top-down internal culture of, this is what we do and this is why we do it. And when we don't do it effectively and efficiently, here's what happens us as a company and how it affects each employee, as opposed to, you have to do this. And this is, I don't think that it works as well when, like you're saying, it's like a dictatorship type of a thing, or it's a creepiness behind the scenes, we're watching you thing. But it's got to be for the betterment of the agency, whether that's because we can prove out profitability models and then there's a profit sharing thing at the end. And if you don't track time properly, then we don't know what the profitability is, or like whatever that thing, that incentive is. But yeah, I think it's got to be culturally driven from top down, from, as part of like, this is this is how we operate as a machine. So yeah, I agree with that fully.
Yeah.
And I think it works far better that way.
Absolutely. And something that we always kind of encourage our customers to do is, or not do, is not make time tracking a black box. You don't want to kind of just give it to your team and tell them, well, track some time. This is how we do it. Like, you have to add this and that to your time entry. And then you never ever show them what happens with this data that is generated. That's for us the easiest way to ensure that compliance and make sure that everyone is not, well, compliance is a loaded word, I think, but make sure everyone's tracking time and generating that data that at the end of the day helps agency, is to then show them how it benefits them as well. So instead of having conversation of, hey, like, why is this taking you so long, or why are you not putting in X amount of hours, you can go to your team and say, well, we see that you're spending way too much time doing this work. How can we improve this? Do we need to bring someone? Do we need to give one of your clients to another team member? So showing them how this is beneficial to them.
I love that. More of a support feature than you're taking too long, you're in trouble, but more, how can we help you be more effective and efficient? What are your thoughts on as far as the different aspects of billability and time tracking? Do you have a position on tracking non-billable time, like internal agency work or things like that? Do you have a thought on like different levels of employees tracking different billabilities?
Yeah, for sure. We actually, something we see, and it's crystallizing a bit as a framework for me, is that we see that people come and like they take time tracking, the use cases from time tracking in steps, and they start to develop an appetite for the different use cases and like the different benefits they can get out of it. Most of our customers, they come in and they're interested in tracking for billing and invoicing. As a side note, we do have a fair share of internal teams, like even within very big organizations, where they do work for different units or like different country offices of the big organization, and just want to see internally how that time is spread. Maybe they're not even billing in the sense of billing internally or like invoicing internally, but they still want to see how they're spending their time to kind of have conversations around that as well. But most customers we see, they come in and they're like, I want to make sure the time I spent working for clients adds up on the invoices, it's accurate, and I can, with confidence, like if someone asks about why we bill them so many hours, I can kind of go back to the data and like give them a very accurate picture of what we did, how much that time that took, and why the invoice has the hours that it has. And then on the second level, we see that some of them start to look at their data, and especially if there's added context to that data. So what client, what project, what task, and so on. All of the more context, generally, the more insight you can get. So they started to use that context to get that insight and understand, okay, is this kind of work profitable? Are we charging too little or too much for this? Is this client profitable for us? Should we fire one of our clients to kind of be able to bring another one who would be more profitable for the agency, and so on. And then the next step, kind of what I mentioned, trying to see within the team what are some opportunities to optimize. I've heard stories of agencies where they had one of the most senior, most experienced developers doing debugging for a client. So that kind of spurred them to start looking for someone more junior who can help with this work, so they can kind of free up the time of the more experienced, more skillful person to deliver more value-added work for clients. And this is like the appetite I'm talking about. It's like with each step, they want to do more and more with their time. And now in like the next final steps, they're looking at things like capacity and utilization, and then forecasting for that. So you get to a point where like, I know that in a few months' time, I'm likely to use one or two clients. So maybe now is the time to start working with the sales team to make sure when that happens, we actually have new clients. So we don't need to make any stressful changes to the team, let someone go, and maybe after that we have to start hiring again because we've kind of lost that person, and now we have more work, so we need to hire again. So uh, definitely comes in. And if we're talking about things like tracking billables, yes, we highly encourage people. We track best practices in the industry very closely, and we try to improve the product on the basis of those best practices. So, for example, if it comes to billable time, yes, that's a feature that exists in the product, and we also make it easy to kind of see what share of your time is billable. And then we work with influencers in the industry who can kind of help you improve your thinking around that and how much of your time should be billable, what's like a benchmark. We try to get data from other agencies as well to understand what's reasonable, what's not.
Yeah, I get asked more. That's probably one of the most common questions, aside from like profitability per employee, is what is their, how billable should each person be, and what's the usability rate for each employee? And I'm sure there are standard benchmarks. I think different level employees should be at different usability rates. But without a tool like this, there's no way to know what your employees are doing, how effective they're being, and how much they're billing out against what they're costing the agency. And I know your tool tracks cost per employee. Some do, some don't. I think that's a great visibility, data set for management to be able to really track per unit, per person profitability. Do you guys deliver any kind of benchmark data to the industry as far as an annual report on usability or forecasting or things like that?
Yes, we fairly recently we launched, we released a report which kind of steps on the data that we have from the industry and tries to set some benchmarks like this, and including splitting them by geography, by subvertical, so what kind of agency we're talking, and looking at things like billable time, average number of clients, and so on, just to, as you said, kind of give a high level picture that other owners and agency operators can use to get a feeling for how they're doing. Is like, are they within the pack, so to say, or are they kind of outlier? Is there an area where they really need to focus to improve?
Yeah. What about, thinking about agencies that are not yet on a tool like this, and they're like, the spreadsheet is good enough. This is how we've always done it. And I have a couple agencies in mind that I'm working with that are like and pushing hard to get into a tool like this. What are features that they should be looking for? Because it's a massive shift. It's cultural, it's process, like top to bottom. Integrating a tool like this is no small task. What are some things that you can kind of share that they should be looking for to find the right tool, that they should think about from a mindset shift on how, kind of how to start taking those steps to start this integration process? Let's say a team of, 15 people.
Great question. I think that two main areas they should consider and look at. First one is ease of use. So making sure it's very easy to, because as you said, it's a mind shift, it's a cultural shift. So the easier it is to start using this new tool, whatever it is, whether it's for time tracking or for something else, the easier it is. I think the easier it would be to kind of instill that, or to go through that shift in how you do things. Because that forms the basis. Like, yes, you need the data, but you need people to be using this to even start getting the data. So if it's not easy, if it's too hard, then you're kind of already setting yourself to fail. And especially when it comes to time tracking, for me, the second one, I already think mentioned it one or two times, is the ability to generate context around your data. And I actually want to use like a very specific example from someone who is part of the Toggl team now, but before they used to work for a fairly large agency. And they were doing time tracking, but in a very traditional way with a timesheet they filled at the end of the week. Even though that person was doing fairly similar type of work and projects, it would be very hard for them when they were talking to a new lead, a new potential client about a similar project. It was email marketing, so like a very similar project to the 10 they just completed. It would still be very hard for that person to give an accurate estimate of how much it would take them to deliver such a project. Because,
Right.
yes, they were doing time tracking, they were fitting in their timesheet at the end of the week, maybe even by day and by client, I don't know. But because they don't have the additional context and granularity of the data around tasks, projects, type of projects, type of tasks, they couldn't give this accurate estimate. And if you imagine this happening over 15 people in your example, or even more in larger organizations, you get to a point where you either like setting the bar too low just to win the business, but then you see that it actually costs you more to deliver that work, or you just like pricing yourself out of contention really, because you have to set the price too high to make sure you're making a profit.
Yeah, all great use cases on. It just makes good sense. Just bring on a modern tool, get the data, get the efficiencies, better forecasting. So yeah, I appreciate your mindset on it, as opposed to, I feel like I'm biased, and I feel like yours is from the mindset of not just pushing out the tool that you're working for, but that you believe in it because you've been on a team that it had an impact on. So I'm grateful for your perspective. I want to kind of jump to some random rapid fire questions real quick. But before I do that, I want to share that Toggl is offering a 20% off code for 3 months from the date of this podcast getting published. So we should be at somewhere mid-October when you're hearing this. So it should be 20% off for an annual plan for new customers of Toggl. There'll be a coupon code in the show notes on agencyoutside.com or wherever you're listening to this podcast. So make sure you use that code. Check out Toggl. They offer, a demo, and I think they've got a free trial. Lots of really cool features. But definitely get the data that you need to run your agency better with a tool like Toggl. Take advantage of this coupon code. So a couple of random rapid fire questions for you, my friend. First is, and again, I'm excited to get your perspective from Bulgaria. What is a new audiobook, regular book, podcast, TV show, something that you're just binging the heck out of that you can't get enough of?
Just a few days ago, I saw Oppenheimer, and that's still top of mind. Loved it. I'm a big fan of Nolan, but I think he outdid himself this time. And especially if you consider that like the underlying topic is quite boring. It's physics and a little bit of politics. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to spoil the movie for anyone, but if you think about how boring in general it is, the way he built the movie is just amazing. I know this is not super connected to the topic, but still, like, good storytelling, I think, is an amazing skill that comes in handy in whatever line of work you are, and especially for agencies, which are inherently creative businesses. Book, I've been rereading Crossing the Chasm. It's a famous book on marketing innovative tech products. So that's, again, something that's top of mind at the moment.
Awesome. And then finally, what is, and again, doesn't need to be business related or work related, but what is a new tool that you've integrated into your day-to-day or your life that you look back and you're like, how did I live without this? Whether it's personal, professional, digital, physical, anything like that.
Trying to think of. So up until a few months ago, these were such a thing. I love these, but they actually started not working so well quite quickly. So I'm not sure if I love them this much, but when they're new and working fine, like just the noise cancellation is something that I love on them.
The AirPod Pros, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, big fan. Awesome. Ilia, I really am grateful for your time, joining me from so far away, sharing your insight and your knowledge on just kind of the mindset behind time tracking and being able to share your time with us. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me again. I really enjoyed it as well. It's a lot of fun doing this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. As always, if you found value in this episode, chances are someone else will too, so please share it with your network. Also, if you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love, drop me a note. Let's get them on. Finally, find someone to hug today.